and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Let's go ahead and pull up our final segment of the day. And this story, it has me at pause. A little bit of a pause here. It's interesting to see how people like AOC and other progressive lawmakers are reacting to this nightmare we're in regards towards gerrymandering, the Democratic establishment. Occasionally, look, I will agree with some things that these Democratic progressive lawmakers say when they post it on Twitter. Like when they say, hey, Medicare for all is a good thing. Student debt forgiveness is a good thing, which I have to say, when I see those tweets, I agree with them. But then my follow-up is, well, what are you going to do about it? So recently, there's been a little back and forth push between AOC and other Democratic lawmakers towards the Democratic establishment in regards towards what happened in New York State, where the districts were redesigned. If we can, let's pull up this video again from Case Study QB. Now, again, I don't know why Twitter is censoring Case Study QB so much. All what he's doing is posting videos from MSNBC or CBS or CNN or Fox News. It really shouldn't happen. And the censorship is starting to get even worse. But that's the world we're in. If we can, let's play that video. Let's pull it up.
Playing out right now in New York as the state is still trying to finalize its new map of congressional districts. So last month, the Court of Appeals for the state struck down a map drawn by Democrats, ruling that the maps violated a state ban on partisan gerrymandering. And as I noted, unlike in states like Ohio, where Republicans in power have simply decided to run roughshod over the courts, New York Democrats are basically just sucking it up and obeying this ruling. That has left them scrambling, with candidates still unsure where they're running and the congressional primary postponed until August. Now, on Monday, the court-appointed special master released a revived draft map that threw everything into further disarray. Because under the newly proposed lines, longtime members in House leadership, Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney, would be pitted against each other in the same district. And in the wake of this new map, we've seen action from one member of Congress that I have to say is among the most egregious political malpractice I think I've ever seen in my life. So here's the deal. Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney represents New York's 18th district. He's also the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, known as the DCCC. That's a big job. And his job is to help Democrats win midterm elections this year. He's tasked with helping fundraise and message and strategize, particularly for Democrats in tough races in frontline districts. That is a really, really hard job, and I do not envy him, and I praise him for taking it on. It's kind of thankless, okay? Now, in this new draft map, the 18th district that Sean Patrick Maloney currently represents has been redrawn. On the left, you'll see the district as it's been since 2012. On the right is a new proposal, but basically covers around 70% or more of Maloney's current constituents. It's still his district. Now, here's the thing. This new version, which has more than 70% of his current district, no longer includes his actual home, though members of Congress are not required, we should know, to live in their districts. In 2020, the 18th district that Sean Patrick Maloney represents voted for Joe Biden by 5 points. The newly redrawn version would be a bit more favorable to Democrats, backing Biden by 8 points. Okay. Within half an hour of this new map being released, Sean Patrick Maloney announces on Twitter that if the maps are finalized, he will abandon his current district and run instead in the neighboring redrawn 17th district. But the 17th district already has a sitting Democratic member of Congress. His name is Mondaire Jones, young black man, freshman, now facing a primary from the head of the DCCC, the person whose job it is to keep the Democratic majority by winning difficult races. According to Politico, as the draft map currently stands, that 17th district is an easier one for Democrats, supports Joe Biden by 10 points. 2 points more favorable for Democrats than the 18th that Sean Patrick Maloney now represents. But rather than putting his money where his mouth is and running in the slightly harder district, Sean Patrick Maloney is abandoning it, even though he says he is only shifting districts because of where his home is.
I'm the only sitting member who lives in the district, which is now numbered New York 17, which remains a competitive district, by the way, that we have to win in the fall. From my point of view, I'm just running where I landed.
Okay, but maybe you could have waited more than 25 minutes to announce that, A. B, you don't have to run living in the district. And C, your decision still puts a freshman Democrat at risk, right? Like, you're going to primary this freshman Democrat. Who's going to run the 17th? And that decision has prompted a lot of criticism. Today, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called for Maloney to resign as chair of the DCCC if he primaries his freshman colleague. She called the decision, quote, terrible, hypocritical, adding that it absolutely further imperils a majority. Mondaire Jones told Politico, quote, Sean Patrick Maloney did not even give me a heads up before he went on Twitter to make that announcement. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about Sean Patrick Maloney.
And let's pause it right here.
As I've said before.
Pause it right here for a quick second so we can actually, because I think we've seen enough of this video already. So what can we take away from this? These are the actions of a corrupt party that wants to maintain its majority. And look, the Democratic establishment, its leadership, and especially the new members who are pro-corporate and will and actually have closer ties to people like Nancy and Chuck Schumer and Biden and Harris and everyone else who's part of the Democratic establishment leadership, they're going to do everything they can to undermine the quote-unquote progressives. So to people like AOC or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, is it worth it now that you gave up most of your dignity and respect by bending over backwards for a party that will still stab you in the back? In 2018, in 2020, when Harlan's media was interviewing Democratic progressive candidates who were running during those two election cycles, we heard the same thing from all these candidates that were fighting for progressive values. The DCCC is doing everything they can to undermine our campaign. The DCCC is supporting the incumbent over us. And as we've reported on the show, the DCCC, the Democratic establishment leadership, and all of them will do everything they can to undermine any kind of progressive running in their party. And if they're willing to do this to that one freshman House representative, AOC, you do realize that the Democratic Party will primary you first before they ever even think about going after somebody like Sinema or Manchin. And I just want to read a few short excerpts from this article from The Hill. We don't need to pull it up right away, but here's a few things from AOC. Given the resources that he has at the helm, it creates a conflict of interest, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says. If he's going to enter in a primary and challenge another Democratic member, then he should step aside from his responsibilities at the DCCC. The New York progressive claim that Maloney's decision to run in the state's newly drawn 17th district in a map that still needs to be finalized instead of the 18th congressional district he currently represents is particularly shameful as a member of the Democratic leadership, especially as the leadership of the DCCC, who asks all of us to make sacrifices in one way or another, who asks progressives to make sacrifices on their stances in order to preserve a majority. To which I have to say to AOC, well, you sacrificed everything to the Democratic establishment. What do they owe you? You gave up all your power. You didn't do anything about forced to vote. You didn't call them out for forced to vote for 15. You didn't do anything for the March for Medicare for All or even acknowledge the 3-day General Strike Summit meeting. Progressives in the Democratic Party, you gave up your dignity and your respect and your ability to fight by working for a party that will still betray you no matter what you do. And voters see that. Voters see that these progressives who we elected into office have no backbone whatsoever. And these same progressives in the Democratic Party who are now right now upset what's happening in New York State with the whole area being redistricted are the same progressive lawmakers who vote for more war, who have turned a blind eye towards the corruption from the Biden-Harris administration. These progressive lawmakers in the Democratic Party are still proud to say that they're Democrats, even though party leadership is working with the GOP. It's one big club. You know, it wasn't too long ago, way back when, if we just rewind back clocks, when good old Nancy Pelosi was for Medicare for All. Of course, it was an act, and then she was very vocal against it, and even went on the record to say, we're capitalists, through and through. And that's Mama Bear to AOC. This is the problem with our democracy, is that we have people who are redistricting the entire areas that they live in so that they can maintain their power. That's what we're seeing from the Democratic leadership. And don't worry, the Republican Party does the exact same thing too in the states that they control. They'll do anything they can to maintain the majority, to maintain absolute power and no responsibility towards the average citizen. If you think you have a say in how these districts are being redesigned or how they're going to represent you, you've been lied to. I want to bring up Chicago, for example. Recently, our city was redistricted. And I want to give a shout out to Miguel H. if he's here in the live stream chat, since he's from Chicago. It's a nightmare city and how it's been designed. The way the aldermen, and these are Democratic aldermen, who designed the city to look like a madman made a jigsaw puzzle. It's anything to maintain the politicians' power over the people. And AOC right now being upset towards Nancy or the DCCC or anyone else part of the Democratic establishment, it's all a show. If you were really angry about it, if you were really vocal about this AOC and all the other progressive Democrats, not only in New York State, but nationwide, if you were really upset about this, you'd actually form your own party. You'd actually walk away from the Democratic Party. Because what do you owe these Democratic lawmakers? Nothing.